Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome to Alan Keyes America here on Talk to Solomon. My friend and my hero, Alan Keyes, former ambassador to the United Nations, former presidential candidate, former senatorial candidate, and current father, husband, and all-around good guy, Alan Keyes. Did I read that right, Alan?
Well, thank you for the compliment, Stan. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you with us. Alan, there's a lot happening in our country and our world these days, and it's hard to decide where to start, but there is, and I don't know how to say this exactly, there is an attempt, it seems to me, and I'd like your thoughts, by the left, I'll use that in the broad sense, to say that those of us on the right are being potentially violent or inciting violence, potentially immoral or illegal or unethical in speaking up. And even though when they were against the past president or against issues or against wars, did all kinds of things, it was okay. But if we so much as say, ouch, when we get hit in the head with a brick, somehow we're the bad guys.
Well, I think it's obviously self-serving, as a lot of the rhetoric that they've been hurling around has been in recent weeks, especially as it's become clear that this pell-mell rush toward a socialist takeover of the country doesn't sit well with the American people. So I think that this is a reaction, first, as usual, aimed at discrediting opponents when you can't really deal with the arguments they're making, and also leading us into what appears to be a new stage in their efforts to establish their socialist government, and that is to ignore the objections of the people, to establish procedures in the Congress that kind of do things without even telling folks what's going to be in any given bill, and essentially do an end run around the sovereign people of the United States in order to put things in place before they can react to them. So I think that in some ways, this assault, this verbal assault on their opposition is meant to be a distraction, like a magician's trick, so that people will be looking over there instead of looking at what they're actually doing.
The health care reform, as you just pointed out, is going in the wrong direction for them. The latest Rasmussen poll says just 41% of the whole populace wants this. The overwhelming majority, 56%, not that overwhelming is maybe the wrong word, but a noticeable majority, 56% is against it. But the trend, this is the lowest it's been, the highest disapproval, the lowest approval, and yet we have seen the President of the United States in an unprecedented way address any and all Americans in any and all ways, and say, frankly, what he's been saying since this whole concept started, and it's not working. Now, what is it about dropping approval percentages that they don't understand that America doesn't want what they're suggesting?
Well, I think it's been clear from the reaction around the country that a lot of the things that they're doing, but particularly the features of health care that targeted aging people for rationing, that clearly were aimed at giving government bureaucrats control over people's access to health care. Combine that with the fact that it's become clear, I think, at just a common sense level to a lot of Americans around the country, that the Obama faction people, president on down, have been lying. And that in point of fact, the denials that have come forward, for instance, there were strenuous denials that they were going to be having federally funded health care for illegal immigrants. And after the denials didn't work and it was clear that there was great opposition to this, now they have people coming forward, and they apparently went into a back room and decided, well, you know, the reason that we're having this trouble is that we won't just forthrightly argue that we ought to be paying for these illegals. Let's go do that. Since we're going to do it, we should make our arguments for it. And now they've come out and started trying to make these arguments, which obviously don't sit well with the people of this country. At one level, it's kind of strange to see these individuals backing somebody who says that we can't afford to take on America's leadership role for freedom in different parts of the world. We can't afford to work with other free countries to try to sustain ourselves against the threats from terrorism and from dictator governments in various parts of the world and all that. We can't afford that. But we can afford to have a combination of an border immigration policy that leaves the doors open so people can come from all over the world into the United States. And then we'll offer to pay for everybody's health care when they get here. We can't afford to do that. This is crazy. And I think people looking at this say, but that makes no sense. And they reject it.
Well, I think they reject it because people, even if they've gone to public schools, can add and subtract and multiply. And if you take 12 or 15 or 18 or 20 million illegals times $4 or $5 or $6 or $7,000 per year, that comes up to some substantial money. When you look at the stresses that the border states and other states are having in keeping their lights on, and then say, well, let's just add another multiple billions of dollars, people are saying that's insanity, because when they go to take their kids to get health care, they have to wait for hours or days because there are thousands, in a particular case, maybe dozens or 100 illegals who in their own countries that they don't have private doctors in Mexico or El Salvador, so they assume that you go to the clinics to get your health care. That's the way they were. That doesn't make them bad people. So they're that way here. It's
well, and it flies in the face, Stan, of the idea that these proposals are somehow aimed at dealing with the, quote, problems in the American health system. Now, when we review what those problems actually are, it obviously isn't that we don't have good research. We have some shortage of drugs to deal with things. No, research and development of new drugs, all of that. These are areas where America is a leader. It's not surgical techniques. It's not expertise in dealing with various and assorted kinds of challenges, from heart disease and cardiovascular problems to how you're going to handle diabetes. We are in the lead in that. Where's the problem? The problem, if there is one, is their so-called claims of access, which I think a lot of work has been done to debunk these figures that they've been trying to use, trying to claim that so many people in the healthcare. It turns out that of the people who actually want to have health insurance in this country, you probably have 90% of the folks who want it who are insured. You have 10% who are not getting access to insurance, and half of those don't want it because they're making enough money, but they don't want to pay for it. So that argument goes by the boards. And it turns out that if you're going to be adding a massive population of illegals and things of this kind, you're not going to be dealing with the cost problem. You're going to be making it worse. So people have looked at it from a common sense point of view and said, well, as a way of actually improving the health system in this country, it doesn't look like it makes much sense. And then they've had to figure out, well, if it doesn't make sense, why are they proposing it? That's the question people, I think, have been asking, and the answer is pretty simple. It is a consolidation of power in the hands of these politicians and bureaucrats, and that consolidation of power and control is an end in itself for them. That's pretty clear on the part of the socialist-leaning, communist background of a lot of the Obama people and the people that have come with this individual into the White House. That's pretty clear that that's their background. That's what they're aiming to achieve, and health care is just an excuse to go after that kind of power. And sadly, I think there are large elements of the American political elite and others who will go along with this agenda because it means that there's going to be more power for them, more perquisites for them, more control of the people of this society for them. But a lot of the folks at the grassroots look at this and say, but wait a minute. That means you're going to turn America into a country pretty much like people are some power elite, some arrogant, elitist little clique that controls the society. These people pretend to be progressives, but they're actually turning the clock back. And I don't mean turning it back a dozen years or a generation or two. They're turning